Hello, I'm Colin Brown, Director of Campaigns and Political Engagement for the Motorcycle Action Group. I'm delighted to have been given the opportunity to submit this video presentation for you today for the Road Safety Great Britain Powered Two-Wheeler Conference, or if you prefer, the RSGB PTW Conference. I hope that what I've got to say today gets you thinking a little bit about motorcycle safety. But if there's anything that I say that you want to ask me more about, you might actually get the chance when I shall be appearing on the Road Safety Great Britain Powered Two-Wheeler Conference Question Time session, or for those who like an acronym, the RSGB PTWQT session. So the theme for this presentation is Think Bike, or more specifically, Rethink Bike. Now, the reason for this is that I do think there is an awful lot of room to rethink how we deal with motorcycle safety, and certainly certain aspects of it. Now, when it comes to thinking about motorcycles, what we have to remember is that everybody is starting from a very different point. Everybody has their own values, perceptions, and prejudices that they put on their thought process. We're all familiar with the Think Bike signs that go up around the road at various times during the year. I first became aware of them quite a few years ago. My first reaction on seeing them was, oh, Think Bike, yeah, I do that all the time. That's great. But of course that may not be the same reaction as other road users who don't ride motorcycles had when they saw them. They probably, in my view, are more likely to have thought, Think Bike, think what? The last 12 months have been pretty extraordinary from a road traffic perspective, with lockdowns and travel restrictions. The way we use the roads, the way we think about the roads, we've had a lot of time to give it a lot of thought. Ironically for me, riding my motorcycle is one of the things that I do to actually stop myself thinking about these things. The focus that is required to ride a motorcycle, well, is something that actually gives me escape from the meandering, wandering thought processes that normally go on when you sit and think about road safety and motorcycles. Over the last 12 months, I've been able to have conversations with a wide range of people about motorcycle safety, from your average rider, motorcyclist, right the way through to people from the World Health Organization. So there's been an awful lot of thought that has gone into this area for me over the last 12 months. I've dabbled with a certain amount of analysis of statistics myself, but ultimately I think the thing that is going to really change motorcycle safety going forward is some pretty major shifts in thinking. Indeed, I think those shifts in thinking need to take place not just for motorcycle safety, but for all road safety. The term vulnerable road user is a bit of a sticky subject when it comes to motorcycling. Many motorcyclists don't like to use the term vulnerable road user. I think it bears with it certain connotations of weakness and claiming to be a victim, which is not what most bikers like to do. So it is something that does become problematic. Now, as we know, there's 4 groups of vulnerable road users in the official classifications: pedestrians, cyclists, horse riders and motorcyclists. The problem that we get though is that the vast majority of people are not one type of road user. They use different modes of transport depending on what the trip requirements are, what day of the week it is, what time of day it is. So somebody who is a vulnerable road user at one point may not be a vulnerable road user at another point. So why are we attaching a label to an individual that isn't actually applicable to the individual? It is actually applicable to the type of transport mode. Realistically, it's perhaps better to say it's applicable to the lack of safety that is provided by the transport system when you choose a certain mode of transport. Now, the choice of mode of transport can be perfectly legitimate. choosing to ride a motorcycle is a legitimate choice of transport. So why is it then that the road system doesn't afford you the same amount of safety as it does when you're in, say, a car? I think, therefore, that there is an awful lot of room to suggest that the whole paradigm of vulnerable road user needs to be closely looked at, and possibly even dropped altogether. At the end of the day, it is not the user that is vulnerable, it is the system that makes the user vulnerable. Vision Zero is another area of concern for motorcyclists. It's one of those areas that is difficult to explain quite what the problem is. After all, Vision Zero as a vision is wonderful. Why would anybody argue with a vision for zero road fatalities? It's not something that anybody in their right mind is ever going to argue. So why is it then that many motorcyclists don't like the idea of Vision Zero? Now, I think it comes down to the fact that it's the absolute being applied, is that we attach a date to Vision Zero. So dates are set, goals are set to achieve Vision Zero by a certain date. Now, realistically, how likely are we to hit zero road fatalities? The concern is that when you place that target, if you're getting very close to it and the only people left on the road who are suffering fatalities happen to be motorcyclists, what you're probably going to do, you're going to restrict motorcycling, aren't you? You're going to stop people from doing it. Ultimately, why not ban it? As road safety professionals, the noises coming out are constantly that motorcycling is the most dangerous form of transport. These messages don't sit well because people relate it back to Vision Zero and say, so basically what's happening here is you're going to look for excuses to stop me doing what I love doing, i.e. riding a motorcycle. One story that sticks in the mind of motorcyclists when it comes to Vision Zero is one of the comments that was made right back in the early days when it was first put forward as an idea. It was actually said that motorcycles don't fit in Vision Zero. So there's this underlying concern or suspicion with motorcyclists that Vision Zero is ultimately aimed at banning motorcycling. Ultimately, Vision Zero could be achieved next week if we really wanted to. All you would need to do is stop everybody using the road. So it's an easy solution. We can do Vision Zero, like I say, next week. Why are we waiting? Despite the fact that Vision Zero rejects the idea of cost benefit when applied to road safety, the reality is we do still apply a cost benefit relationship when it comes to road safety. Take crash barriers, for example. Motorcyclists don't like, in particular, the wire rope barriers. That's one of those things that you'll often see motorcyclists campaigning about. The view is that they're not as safe for a motorcyclist as other forms, or there could be better ways of doing crash barriers that would make them safer for motorcyclists. And to be fair, there's a point there, because crash barriers are not tested for safety against a motorcyclist. So all the testing regime for regulation around crash barriers relates to impacts by cars and HGVs. They've never been tested for impacts by motorcyclists. Now, if we applied a Vision Zero approach principle and ignored the cost-benefit relationship, the fact that there's very few motorcyclists and very rarely do they collide with a crash barrier is irrelevant. It can happen, and therefore every penny should be spent to remove that danger, surely. But then again, there's a cheaper option, isn't there? Let's just ban motorcyclists. So, as I say, there's always this underlying suspicion when it comes to road safety conversations, and especially Vision Zero. So you splash the term Vision Zero in front of many motorcyclists and you're immediately switching them off to any messaging that you want to give. Now, you will have seen from the earlier video clip of me trying to walk, I've suffered a pretty serious accident in my motorcycling career. It left me with a rather mangled left leg. Now, when I was lying on the road after that unfortunate incident, I'd finished the arguments with the passers-by about whether or not removing my crash helmet would cause my head to fall apart. The first question that I asked anybody there was, how's my bike? am I still going to be able to ride my bike? I wasn't interested in the fact that my leg was mangled. I was interested in the fact that I'd got a few scratches on my motorcycle. Motorcyclists love riding motorcycles, and that is their top priority. So as soon as you start restricting their choice, their ability to ride their motorcycle, you're going to meet resistance. Now, obviously, Vision Zero calls for the application of the safe systems approach. And again, the safe systems approach is an excellent approach to road safety. Nobody's got any qualms with it. I think from a motorcyclist perspective, it's often felt that it's not applied equally to all road users. I mean, take for example, the closest relation to motorcycling, which is cycling. If we compare road safety output for cycling, it seems to me that the vast majority of the emphasis is placed upon safe infrastructure, so redesigning junctions, introducing segregated road space for cyclists. We then directly compare that with the effort for motorcycling, and it seems to me that the vast majority of the effort is put into changing rider behaviour, educating the rider to ride more responsibly. This is clearly an imbalance when it comes to the safe systems approach. At MAG, we fight tooth and nail to gain access to bus lanes because we say it makes us safer because it moves us out of the flow of other traffic. But this is not something that we're given willingly. We have to fight for it every step of the way. So it's not surprising then when motorcyclists feel that, well, we're just being left out. You don't really care as much about the life of a motorcyclist as you do about the life of a cyclist. If you can segregate a section of the road space for a cyclist, why can you not do that for a motorcyclist? So it's this asymmetry in terms of the approach when the safe systems is applied. That's what motorcyclists become a little bit upset about. A great deal of road safety work goes into changing the behaviours of road users. However, this is an area where I think there's a certain amount of confusion that creeps in. My position would be is that there's a significant difference between competencies and behaviours. Competencies are obviously something that you can give to people by training. Say all the training in the world, however, doesn't necessarily change your behaviour. Competencies is clearly something that is relevant to the transport choice, the transport mode. Teaching a motorcyclist how to do an emergency stop in a car is not the same as doing an emergency stop on a motorcycle. So there are different competencies based on the type of vehicle that you're using for the trip. But when it does come to behaviours, those really are universal. The same behaviour can be exhibited by a car driver, a cyclist, a motorcyclist, even a pedestrian. So when it comes to educating people on behaviours, surely we should ignore the transport mode. What I think often happens when it comes to road safety messaging to do with changing people's behaviours is that we make the mistake of just delivering it to certain road user groups. So this can lead to a certain amount of friction and unnecessary victimisation creeping in. So if we do a safety campaign, say for speeding, it's a fairly common subject where we want to change road users' behaviours, speeding, it doesn't make sense to do messaging that is aimed purely at motorcyclists, because that target audience is going to take the assumption that you're aiming this messaging at them, which, to be fair, you are. However, they know that that behaviour is not a problem just for motorcyclists. They know it's also a problem for car drivers. So why would you not be telling them to slow down and stop speeding? The reality is that you probably are telling the car drivers to slow down and stop speeding, but that's not what's heard in the message that you've just targeted at that road user group. My belief is that when it comes to road safety messaging that seeks to change road users' behaviours, we should avoid at all costs aiming it at particular road user groups. So all this brings me to one of my biggest concerns about road safety at the moment, and this is what seems to me to be a growing problem of tribalism. Now, this tribalism exists between different groups of road users, so whether that be cycling, car drivers, motorcyclists, pedestrians, whatever it is, there just seems to be this us and them narrative that appears all the time. And of course, along with that us and them narrative comes the blame culture. Now, I don't think that this is beneficial to anybody. And let's face it, that's not an argument that I think is particularly controversial. Most people that I speak to about this subject pretty much agree that yes, tribalism is a problem and it is growing. But what I really want to get across here is that it is possible that the road safety profession is actually adding to that. Now, I'm not saying that this is being done deliberately. I'm not saying that it's being done with any kind of malice, but I do think it is happening subconsciously. There's lots of messages that go out that can actually help to increase that us and them, that blame culture. There's enough messaging that goes out that upsets motorcyclists, whether it be Vision Zero and comments that motorcycling doesn't fit in Vision Zero, whether it be local councils publishing documents that say that motorcyclists are a danger to themselves, academic papers that suggest that motorcycling should be restricted, that it is an unintended consequence of policy. This kind of thing is never going to wash. The recent review of the Highway Code led to this idea of the hierarchy of road users, where certain road users bear a greater responsibility for the safety of others on the road. Now, on the surface, it sounds very seductive. It's a sensible idea, but I think it also brings with it a major problem, and that is the increase in tribalism when it comes to the road users and road safety. What we see is time after time people pointing the finger of blame at others, saying it's your fault that the casualty statistics are so bad for cycling, or it's your fault that the casualty statistics for pedestrians is so high. The fingers normally get pointed at car drivers most, but there's a growing element that the finger is also being pointed at motorcyclists. The concept of road danger is not one that I disagree with. The problem is how we actually frame that in the conversation in such a way that it can be used productively to actually help reduce the problems of road casualties rather than inflame and agitate people into more tribalism, because I think that that is a bigger threat to road safety than anything else at the moment. Okay, so I've spent a fair amount of time considering what the problems are with road safety. Now, obviously, it would make an awful lot of sense to come up with some solutions. So this is what I've tried to do during my thought processes. I've tried to come up with ideas for how we can do things slightly better when it comes to road safety. So what I would like to do is suggest 5 possible solutions that could help make road safety better. Firstly, with respect to the vulnerable road user question, I think it's time that we stopped referring to road users as vulnerable road users. We need to accept that casualties are a result of failures of the system. Now, this is not something that can be simply applied to motorcyclists, naturally. It's got to be done across the board. But I think a genuine consideration needs to be given to the idea of just dropping the vulnerable road user classification. Secondly, I'd like to see a move away from the ideology of Vision Zero. I think we need to be moving towards what could possibly be termed as smart road safety. Smart road safety should be specific, measurable, importantly, achievable, realistic, and timely. Thirdly, we need to consider a change to the safe systems approach. The five pillars of the safe system approach are absolutely fine. There's no issues with that. It is about the application and making sure that they are all applied evenly to all modes of transport. So this is a removal of the asymmetry when it comes to the safe systems. The fourth idea is this question of behaviours and the messaging around it. We need to start delivering behaviour messaging when it comes to road safety to all road users simultaneously, the same message at the same time to all road users. Let's stop putting behaviours and trying to assign them to certain specific transport modes. That's not helpful. And then finally, it comes down to responsibility. We should be looking for an equal increase in responsibility from all road users. This isn't something that a few road users are required to do. It is something that all road users are required to do. I think we should be looking at producing a mantra that says, I could blame others, but I choose to be better. Okay, that completes my presentation for today. I hope it's provoked a little bit of thought for you. But for now, I'm off to stop thinking for a while.